for our colleagues who'll be joining us late or who will be, who hopefully will see it tonight, I hope. So let me share my screen and we're going to get started. I really appreciate your being here and being here on time. I think that's awesome. All right. Last week, a little bit of confusion about the time, and that I'm sorry for that. I know in the past you've had a 7 o'clock class, so I appreciate those of you who responded to the survey. I think it came back. There were 5 that were in favor of keeping it at 6, 4 I believe that really could do either one, and then there were 2 that wanted to move it to 7. So we're going to keep it at 6. But again, I want to remind you that it's best when you are here and you are Zooming with us, because that way we can have some interaction. So you're not just sitting down later on and having a 45-minute watching a video. So I like it, and it works better for me if we can have that kind of interaction. So anytime you can be here in person or in Zoom, it would be phenomenal, and I think it would make a better experience. But I really do appreciate your being here. So I start all sessions going back to the Blackboard shell. And so we are in 6:05, and tonight is the second session. So I want to just hit a couple of things to remind you about and bring your attention to. The weekly class schedule, and I think I have this down here, so I don't have to do that. No, I don't. Here it is. Yeah, here it is. All right, so I just want to remind you, so I really don't want us to get too far behind, because I noticed in my last semester when I was teaching 6:05 that sometimes this coursework can very quickly overwhelm you, and some of the evidence is as well. So it really is best if you try to stay as close to the target as possible. Now, I just want to remind you, I don't have any strong due dates for each one of these things, but if it is listed under week 1, I would truly encourage you to try to accomplish it during week 1. If you fall behind a week, don't worry about it, but don't wait until we get to April for the big projects that you have to do and for a lot of these assignments. So basically, as you know, there are columns. This is kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. Adult learners is what I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about. We're also going to talk about the big project, the SIAP, that is due this semester. Here are the reading. We have 2 textbooks that we use in this course. So there's the reading that you're following along. By now, and I've looked at Grade Center just a few minutes ago, and I think I've graded everything in it, but you have to do 1 of the discussion boards per week. And just to remind you, that means don't do 1 and 2, do 1 or 2. So try to do 1 per week. And then if there's something that is due that I want to, and again, these due dates are kind of flexible, but I just put it in here so you can kind of pace yourself. If there's something here that needs to be done with TaskStream or in the TaskStream Dropbox, not TaskStream. And I know Dr. Robertson will talk to you about that in a moment. But by the 3rd week, which is next Thursday, you should already have the beginnings of that SIAP Task 1 in there for me to grade, and once I grade it, it'll go on to Mark. And then the Dr. Robertson, and then there's the scenario 2. So keep an eye on this and pull it up often, so you will have kind of an idea of where we're going and what you should be following along with the pace. All right. I didn't mean to go back out that far. All right. So also under here, here's where you'll be putting your SIAP Project 1 for me to grade. Discussion board is where you also have items that you will be looking at. The scenarios, you'll notice in week 3, there was one of the scenarios, and they are out of order. So don't worry about that. I think the first scenario that you have is scenario number 2. And then, of course, each one of the sessions, there's some information about. Let me first, before I go to session 2, let me go back to session 1 and remind you that at the end of every session in which I record it, I will come back and put down the video session of the meeting. So, of course, if there was something that you really missed that you just really want to hear me say again or hear one of you say again, it is right here for you to go back to and have a reference to. All right. And we talked about the major leadership theories, and we have an assignment. We're going to talk about that a little bit tonight as well. I also want to remind you, occasionally look for something, and I'll try to put it in the week that we're having our Zoom session. If I find something really interesting in some of the journals or some of the articles I read, that I think you might could use in your papers, or you might could use later on when you go into the doctoral program here at Gardner-Webb, kind of some useful reference things for you. All right, so January 24th, that means it's the 2nd week. So by now, you should have read these articles here. And tonight, I'm going to really talk about adult learners. All right, but there's an article here that I think is wonderful, The Changing Times of, and it's 11 different charts about some of the big changes coming in education. very timely. Everything I put in here is going to be timely for you. And again, something that I think you could use as a reference. So that's week 2. And if you'll see, the first thing we have on the agenda is for Dr. Robertson to talk about your big project. And I know that's one of those that's going to be big on your mind, because there are 2 components to this course. One is you've got to pass the coursework, and that's attendance, that's participation, that's grades, and that's having all the homework that's due to me. But then, of course, after that, you have to go into TaskStream for that final thing, which is where Mark will help you through. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Robertson. And let me see, Dr. Robertson, how did I get you there?
Yeah, I hope we figure this out, because I don't know how to get it back to you when the time comes. So be prepared to talk me through it.
All right, let me get everybody else back up here. There is a way for me to turn this over to you.
So I've heard.
To make you the host.
And then to you, but I got to figure out how.
You would think I would know how, but
I know the feeling.
All right, Mark, what I've done is can everybody see Mark?
I can see them.
I can see him now.
Okay, so Mark, the screen is not a huge screen, but the screen is on you. So that means, I believe if you bring up a document, it should work.
Except I can't get to my documents to do it. Let's see.
Can you hit share?
Can I hit share? View options.
Like right here, share. Oh, I can stop sharing that. Oh, that's what I have to do. All right.
So now if I hit share, yay. Okay. We got action here, then. Share.
All right.
I think that's it. Everybody see
College
that?
professors does it take to figure out how to Zoom?
Okay, well, just wait till we get it back to you, because that's going to be more hassle than getting it to me, I promise you. Okay, Dr. Stone called me out last week with asking me for a story that I had not thought about at all. So first off, you're going to have to bear through that one. He said, tell me something interesting about yourself. And I'm like, bro. So evidently there was nothing interesting whatsoever that I could think of, but I did in the week since. Remember that most of you guys know that I'm married to an English woman, but the question may be where did Mark, who born and raised and lived his entire life in Charlotte other than 4 years of Wake Forest, meet an English woman? And the answer is in Venice, actually. And the long story is that I was dating this girl spring semester of my junior year, and turned out she had planned to go to Venice, where Wake Forest owns a house and does a foreign program. So with no other reason other than she was going, I went and signed up. And then she did me the great favor of flunking out of school that summer. So I was signed up to go anyway, and I ended up meeting my wife there, and it all turned out great. And the next summer, we actually went to the Outer Banks, my wife and I, on a little vacation before school started, and we went to Pizza Hut and looked up, and who would have been our waitress except for good old Elizabeth, who was the reason I'd gone to Venice in the first place.
Ah.
Oh.
What did your date say about that?
She did well with it. She figured she'd won, so so everything was fine. And you know, my previous girlfriend told us a great place to go. Had a great time, and it'll be 40 years in July, so I guess it worked out. Okay, enough of February stories. That's my interesting story for this week, and I'll try to think of another one in case I get stuck with that again. Okay, I think I sent you guys this form. I am right? Someone, I sent you this form, the SIAP evidence outline.
What we have on the screen is your Zoom.
Right, but can you see my Word document?
I don't see it. No.
Okay, so what can you actually see? Okay, let me do that. Okay. Share. share. Should be there.
We have it now.
Okay, great. I sent you this, right, at the beginning of the semester, students. Am I correct or am I incorrect? Okay.
I'm seeing shaking of heads that they haven't seen it. So, Mark, if you'll send it to me tonight, I'll put it on my Blackboard shell as well with tonight, and I'll actually send it out to them as well when I send them the Zoom session.
Okay, we'll talk to it then now, and I'll send it to you. First, a couple of reminders. You have to have all this stuff done by April 29th, according to Dr. Lamb last night. So that's a hard, fast due date at 9 in the morning. And I'd like to remind you that you put pieces of the SIOP both in the Blackboard shell for the course that Dr. Stone teaches, and you put it also in the internship shell for me to read. Dr. Stone will give you credit for the course, having finished it, but I'll read it probably in more depth and a more critical eye to make sure that it's going to pass task stream. Okay? Just like we've always done it. So one thing I'm going to ask is please do not send me a whole document of all your SIOPs and tell me it starts on page 49 and hope that I'll go down to it and read. Okay? Please just send me the part you're asking me to read and edit. I do a lot of these, and searching through finding where you start a SIOP too can be a little annoying. So part of this I just want to read to you. Oh, and do not use TaskStream as a place for editing. That's for this. This goes directly to the internship shell in Blackboard, and I'll be able to see it, and it's a great vehicle for private comments between me and you. Okay. SIOP has gotten a bad rap or a good rap or a hopeful rap amongst candidates that is cut and paste. And all you have to do is cut and paste what you've already done. And that is not true. You've done the numbers, you've done the work, you've done the analysis, and you have those in your previous papers just about, but you don't have a SIOP project yet until you take it apart and break it down. Now, Ms. McKenzie was my 8th grade English language arts teacher at Cochran Junior High School in Charlotte, and she taught me how to outline a paper. And as far as I'm able to understand, no one gets taught how to outline anymore, but I was taught, and I've used it for everything I've ever done, including my dissertation, which was like 170 pages long because it was qualitative in structure. So I really think it's a way to approach any kind of paper like this. What I've done is taken that document that Dr. Lamb developed several years ago about the SIOP and the rubric for SIOP and tried to make an outline for you that you can follow and put in your own information and go with what it says. It is not required, but I will tell you I bounced it off one of our evaluators and got positive remarks. So it is a good thing to use. I promise you, I will not steer you wrong. Okay. I put things in boldface that if I do in my own paper, I would use the subheadings in APA style and fill them underneath. You do not have to do it. If you find a better way to do it, that's fine by me. But it starts with the SIOP 1 as a school data project. And you have the information for the background. You go straight back to your skip task 1, your prompt 1, and you use that. But you can't just pick up your old papers and throw them at the wall and hope they stick somewhere and that your evaluator is going to read it and know what you're talking about and ignore all the superfluous stuff that you've thrown in there. You need to look through, find what you need, and then reuse it. It's there. You have it. You all did it. I'll sum them all. But it's not going to be 300 pages long because you picked 60 pages for each of the other pieces. Use just task 1 and prompt 1. Your collaborative team, make sure that it's recognized as collaborative. You've done the analysis of data. You did an APSO 1 through 3. If you switch schools, you might have some issues with this, but you can go back and find it pretty quick analysis. One thing that I pointed out in here when you're writing this SIOP 1, you have to disaggregate by subgroups, and it says include all these areas of consideration, every single one of them. If you have others, great, but don't short any. And if you don't have something for one, it requires that you use EVOS data at one point. It's just a little statement in there, but if you don't do it, you won't be scored proficient. Anybody ever has any questions, just butt in and shout at me. If you don't use EVOS in your school, or you don't have access to EVOS in your school, then explain that. Just say that. That's all you need to do. Just make sure that you acknowledge that you knew that you were supposed to do it. Then the school's accomplishments and the school's areas for growth. Set your academic and should have started out with this. This document, SIAP, is your own school improvement plan. It's what you've been building to across the last 4 semesters before this one. All the information, all the different tasks have been building towards this. Okay? So use what you've got, take credit for it, but then make sure that you write something that's readable, that segues from one thing to the other. I included things about what to do for accomplished scores, but I think I've told y'all plenty of times before, the only person that cares whether you made proficient or accomplished is your mother now. So you know, you do things well for your own pride, but there's also a point where you make sure that you get things finished. Okay? And that you share the results with the school improvement team. So that's SIAP 1. Pretty simple. You've got it all. You just go back and pull it out and put it in the right place. Okay? Any questions? SIAP 2. I got one of these today that someone had taken and thrown into the wall. The original version that this person sent me was 65 pages long. Then that person sent me the modified one with just what I asked for, actually not everything I asked for, and it was only 5 pages long. So don't be the 60-page person. Don't be the 5-page person either, because you really need 10. But you need a visual display, data sources, findings. You need a reflection of how this display is related to student achievement, because that's what this is about. All this plan, it's not for you to show off or put on the wall or put in a booklet to take. It's actually a plan for kids to do better in school, to learn more. And then the one that was missing in the one I read earlier today, video evidence of the presentation appears and that results were shown to the school administration. Now that's something we didn't do as you came through the program up to now, but you're going to need something that shows how you did a video presentation. I would say a YouTube, quick YouTube would be the way to go. Okay. Any questions yet? SIAP 2 is close, is short. Doesn't take a whole lot of time, but you do have to go back and find the right information and then plug it in so that it makes sense when you read the whole thing. Okay. SIAP 3. The focus group project. You go back to that, you pull your stuff that you've already done from Skip, from CAP, shows that you met with a team of stakeholders, you list all those people. That you don't redo all this stuff, you've done it. Just make it read so it's something someone can stand. Again, report on group findings and suggestions to the school administration. SIAP 4. How are you going to spend the money? I think I told you at the time you were doing this that this is what separates teachers from administrators, because administrators actually have to get the money, not just complain when the teacher finds out not having it. All this stuff is a skip 2 prompt. You have to actually say the money is this amount. It's not like we need some money for somebody to come be a social worker. We need $60,000 for a line budget item for a social worker to solve this issue. You got to be specific with it, okay? You got to be specific with fiscal resources and human resources. This one all goes back to, I believe it was. then make sure that the resources required connect to what you said you were supposed to be looking for. So the great majority of you are looking at reading issues and lack of reading achievement. So make sure that whatever you've done relates back to that so that it makes some kind of sense out of it. Okay? SciAp 5. Now, some of you guys are fantastic at these. I had to tell several of you that my brain doesn't work real well with graphical organizers, and I actually had to ask Dr. Sanders, if I remember correctly, to look at some of them because they were beyond my poor brain's ability to follow. But I know you have them, and I know they're ready to go. So pull them out and put them together into a single graphical organizer. You guys are really good at them, a whole lot better than I am. Make sure you have your strengths, make sure you have your opportunities for involvement, and show how it relates to student achievement, because that is what you're being hired to do. Not make them sit up straight, not make them show up on time. How's it going to make them be better students, achieve better? Okay? I see my little pitiful graphic organizer. You know, I'm stuck on tables. If you really want to see some wild ones, Amy, I can't say her last name, Drapkenberg. Anyway, Amy does some significant wild ones. SciAp 6. This is definitely not cut and paste because it's new. This is reflection on all 21 competencies. Not any less than 21. It's all 21, and it will finish out your need for competencies. You'll be able to transfer all this into your folios. Remember, you have to cite sources and clinical experience that has something to do with this. How this is where you tie together what I do at school as an intern, what I do at night as a student, and make that into some kind of thing that makes sense. Okay? Then you put it into one final document. You and I have done this many times before, so I'm not going to go over this. Drop all the headings, make sure that it's recognized where you slip from side 1, 2, or 3 into the next one. Okay? Any questions? Promise me? You're all set. You know where to put stuff. You know who's going to score what. You know you don't send it to task stream until you at least ask me. Unless you're looking for possible trouble. Okay.
All right.
Stone, I'm done.
Well, and the other thing too, Mark will be joining us periodically during the course Zoom sessions to kind of catch up with where you are, kind of any kind of insights he may have about some of the documents you've already sent. So thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. And now I think I will, if I can take over the screen.
Okay, so I stopped share, right?
Yes, you stop share.
Okay.
So that will bring it back to me where I can share. Thank you, Mark. Dr. Roberts, appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Good luck, everybody. Enjoy yourself. Hey, I'm coming to graduation just because of you guys, so you better plan to be there.
And they're all going to graduate. So let me.
Oh, that I have no question about.
No question. So let me go back and show you when Dr. Robertson was talking about the assignment Dropbox. This is where you will drop it for me to look at it. And in the clinical shell, Mark, they will drop it in for you to look at. But send it to me first. And again, I will give you a grade of 1 to 100. And basically what I'm looking for are to see that you have actually done the assignment. Whereas Dr. Robertson will come back with probably some more helpful insights to help you make sure you get that 4 in task stream. So his job as the clinical coach too really is pretty much to help you make sure when that project goes into task stream and those anonymous graders look at it, that it is set, ready to go, and will receive a perfect score. But here's where you go and put it in for me to do a class grade for it, and it does have to have a class grade because this is 700 points.
Yes.
For you, because there are 100 points for each one of these things. So that's a 700 points. That's the difference between making an A and probably a C or a D. So you have to do each and every one of these. I prefer that you send it to me first, and if you want to simultaneously send it on to Mark, but let me look at it. There may be some things that I catch that even before you send it to Mark or Dr. Robertson. Mark, I don't know what I can call you, Mark, if that's okay. But
that way,
the intent is to make sure that it is ready for task stream. I think our rate of passage here at TaskStream with all of the projects with the coaches that we use is extremely high. So and that's one of the things that I think the added benefit of going to Gardner-Webb University is that they do have this structure because some other universities do not have that. So we're going to make sure to help you make sure it's perfect. And thank you, Mark. So put that here for me to grade. The only other thing here is the discussion boards and the scenarios. So let me go back to session 2. I'm sorry, I want to go back to session 1 because you had an assignment. Anybody remember that I gave you an assignment? Someone's got to remember this. The last week, for those who were here, and I think some of you were, I asked you to look at the 8 different leadership styles, and I divided the class by anything above the letter L. You were to look at the first 4. If you were below the letter of L, you were to look at the second 4 and at least give me one example. So I had one of your students could not be, Amanda could not be here tonight, so she shared with hers, and of course she is the last 4, and she shared someone. You didn't have to do this because it's basically just going to be a discussion tonight. So I'm going to pull hers down for a moment and see if anybody wants to share with, particularly with anybody above the letter L. That would be you, Ms. Johnson, and Katie, and Ms. Lunsford, that would be you. Anybody want to share some of your thoughts on that? Come on, somebody. You're not going to make me. All right, anybody have a great man theory? Anybody have an example? Did you guys not do your homework?
I had the second part. I don't mind to share.
All right, go.
Starting with what, behavioral or behavior?
All right, we'll go down to yours then. Yours is behavioral. A good example.
So I felt like somebody such as Alvin York, who was trained but also observed and learned. If I don't know if everybody knows who he was or not, but anyway, he was a World War I hero. That's kind of what I felt like. And then for the participative was my first principal. She did.
How so?
She was very good at taking different perspectives from different teachers and staff members. And ultimately, she made the decision, but she asked people their opinion. And she sincerely took their opinion. And that's kind of what struck me as kind of reminiscent of her. As far as management, I had a boss that was a fire chief when I worked for the Town of Boone Fire Department that was very managerial as far as you did it right or you did it wrong. And if you did it right, great. And if you didn't, he land blasted you. So, and he was one of those people that didn't take a rifle out and shoot the one that did the bad thing. He kind of took a shotgun and blasted everybody. So that's kind of who I thought of. And then the relationship was my pastor. He is very good at building relationships and having people come in and plugging them into different committees or different projects or different things going on, and kind of getting everybody bought into the same goals. Does that make sense?
That does. All right. Anybody want to share on the first 4?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was having some issues with my technology.
That's all right.
My video come up. So with the great man theory, I mean, I kind of believe that some people are natural born leaders, but I don't believe that people can't be born, like people can't grow into becoming leaderships, being great leaders. Like, for instance, I think some people, and I'm going to tie it into the second one too. Like, I think some people are just naturally good listeners, you know, very open-minded. I think some people are naturally extroverted where they're not afraid to talk in front of people. And those are some things I think make great leaders, like people who are not afraid to get up there and present, people who are not afraid to listen to the concerns of other people.
I agree.
I think of like natural born leaders. I'm related to the holiday we just partook in. I think of like Dr. King was just naturally kind of charismatic in the way he presents to people. And if you look back at like how he finished school early, he was just naturally smart and things like that. And some people might think he was born that way, but he also had to study to, like study Gandhi and those different leaders that he learned to do the practices that he put in place for people. So I think, you are born with certain innate traits in you, but you can also be nurtured into becoming a good leader, if that makes sense.
I agree. And can I add something to this too?
Yes.
If you look at the title Great Man, that's deliberate, because up until probably the 1900s, all the great people that we study in history, those are probably all great men theories or great men leaders. And it's only because at the point the glass ceiling was very real.
Yes.
There was no opportunity for there to be great women. So that's why it's called great man theories, because this is when I think of the history of the country. These people who rise up to become George Washingtons and Abraham Lincolns, it's because that's just kind of an expectation of them. They were kind of born into it. So you're right. I think Dr. King is an excellent example of the modern history.
Yeah, and it did say that it was primarily a male quality.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Did you have a chance to do any others? If not, we'll move on.
We can move on.
All right. Anybody else want to add anything? Mr. White, I think you're the only one I haven't heard from. Did you weren't with us last week, but did you have a chance to look at the material?
I did not.
All right, that's your homework. Next week I'm going to specifically ask you, so make sure you're here, okay?
I do want to add one more thing, the situational theory one. So I've had 3 different schools that I worked at, and in my new school that I was in, my administrator, she takes me as a situational theory kind of leader, because she doesn't really have like a certain predominant style. Like the last leaders I've had, they've all been women, which I think is funny when we just talk about the great male, the great man thing. But she's very more democratic. Like every time we make a decision, she wants to bring it not just the SLT, but to the whole staff. But then there are a few times where she'll just make a decision. And I've never been with a leader who actually kind of surveys the whole faculty to see what they think about something. So it's been very interesting.
Let me give you a spoiler alert for everybody. When you go and interview for a job, for that principalship or that assistant principalship, they're going to ask you, what is your leadership style? And I would recommend that you certainly not use the first one. If I had to do an interview for a principal's position or an assistant principal's position, I think probably the strength of all of these theories, the one that's the most strongest is number 4, situational, because just as Ms. Johnson was saying, it's someone who she highly respects, because they don't just, it's not black and white. Every decision doesn't based on, this common set of rules, is that they look at each and every one of them. And that shows that you are involved in teamsmanship. You build collaboration. And I'm telling you, as a superintendent for 20 years, if you're telling me that in the interview that I'm interviewing you for a principal, I want to hear that you are a situational leader. So I might recommend that you research that one a little bit more so you'll feel comfortable answering the questions. But when you go in for that first interview, that is going to be music to whoever's ears. And you may want to provide an example of when you did move from the authoritarian to the democratic, because that's what makes a great leader, is knowing what style to use. So you're absolutely correct, Ms. Johnson. All right, Ms. Lunsford, you're back. Did you want to add anything, or we can move? You want us to move on?
Yeah, sorry, my computer decided to restart.
I thought you just didn't want to answer the question. Here I was thinking.
No, I just left. No, I was just going to say the situational one really stood out to me. I have a coworker who is on the leader of a lot of committees, and she does a great job. I think that's why she's the leader of a lot of these committees, is because she can do this. She is put on committees where she has to say, okay, this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to do it, and it's going to get done in 2 weeks. Or she's also put in positions where she says, we all need to make a decision, and I'm just kind of here to facilitate this meeting. So she does a really, really great job of going back and forth, and that one really kind of stood out to me.
I'm not kidding you. That's the one you need to answer that interview question. Very good. All right, the last thing I have for you tonight is a quick little thing about the adult learners. So if you will bear with me, I'm going to walk through this slide. It takes about 10 minutes, and then we will call it a night. All right, in your building, when you become a principal or the assistant principal, you are going to discover very rapidly that it's easy to work with the kids. The adults are another story. You're going to understand very quickly too, and I've heard this said over and over and over again by principals, my job would be great if the teachers weren't there or if there were no adults in the building. And although it's in jest, you are going to have a lot of adults in your building, and most of the work-related stuff that you have to deal with, you're going to have to deal with kids, but you're also going to have to deal with adults. And I know most of you are teachers, so I'm saying this to you because as you take the next step, be prepared, because adult learners are quite different from the kids. So they're in your building. And as you become the leader of your school, you are going to be engaged with them not only as adults, but as learners. So this is a quick little tour of the adult learners. And there are basically 8 characteristics of an adult learner that you're going to need to know when you become that site-based management. One is that adult learners do not need for you to tell them how to do everything. Sort of like you. I don't need to, nor do we have to follow step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Adult learners are self-directed. That's why you become where you are. They are practical as well as results-oriented. Many of your colleagues, as you may be, will just simply say, tell me what I need to do and when it's due, because they will get you the results if they know exactly what the results that you want are. So you got to be practical. They are results-oriented. They really like to check things off their list. That's the way us adult learners are. They are less open-minded than kids are. As you've worked with kids in your school, you'll know that they'll try anything, or they're conditioned to kind of trust us to move them in the right direction. But you will find in your buildings, as you begin to lead and you begin to provide that staff development and other things, that there's a little bit more resistance. And one of the things that you'll hear the most when you walk by that teacher's lounge, we used to do it this way, it worked well, I don't understand why this new principal. So you're going to have to, as you introduce change, you're going to have to realize that there's going to be a little bit more resistance to it. So you're going to have to model that into helping them understand better why you're doing it. They are slower learners, but they do get it, and they can integrate it and across the different areas of integration. They rely a lot on personal experiences as a resource. They are hot. You can motivate them. You can motivate them by different things in your building, whether it's a go home early on Friday, no lunch duty, but they are highly motivated. They wouldn't be in your building if they weren't motivated. They are used or very comfortable with doing multi-level responsibilities. They can multitask. That's not a problem for them. Any teacher that you ever observed can multitask amongst the best of them. But they also have high expectations of themselves, and they also have high expectations of you. Now, I don't know, I can't tell about your ages and all, but I want to turn our attention now to a certain group of adults who are in our buildings and who you will be leading. And that's our Generation X and Generation Y. And actually there's a new generation, but they're not quite there yet. So how do you motivate your Generation X and Generation Y employees? Now, anybody Generation X and Y? Mr. White, what are you? You're probably a Y, aren't you?
I don't know, but I'm 27.
We'll see in a minute. The rest of you are probably Generation X. None of you are a baby boomer like me. But so these next charts will be describing how you motivate them, particularly as your employees. All right, first of all, what year were you born, Mr. White?
1991.
Okay, you're a Generation Y. I'm thinking that the rest of you are, and I may be wrong, don't make me feel bad if I am, but most of you are going to be our Generation X. And so as you are preparing to work with your colleagues, these are folks who were born in the mid-60s to the mid-1980s, or to the 80s, 1980s. But there are some things in their past and their generation. These are going to be great employers, by the way. You guys are great employees. Everybody would love to have a Generation X person because you're motivated. You look for things to do. You look for room to grow. You love choices, and you like to be mentored. You are, however, kind of less motivated, and you can think about the teachers in your building, how many are new and change jobs so much. So your parents, my generation, we got a job and we stuck with it. Your generation is less loyalty to your employer if they don't treat you right, if they don't give you the opportunity to grow, or if they don't give you the opportunity to make choices and mentoring. This is why site-based management and situational leadership is so good for you all. This is kind of what this generation thrives on. So you're defined, of course, by latchkey. You saw your parents work. You saw them get unemployed. A whole lot that went on with this particular generation. Very early into the civil rights, or you were young with the civil rights movement, but you certainly saw through some of the turbulent 70s. But as a principal, when you work with Generation X folks, just realize they will work hard for you as long as you motivate them, you let them have some space. But if they don't feel that, they will leave. And so as your challenge as a school administrator is to try to hang on to these Generation X's, because these are the people, Generation X, these are the ones who we have not an abundance of, but we don't want these people exiting our buildings. We really don't, because it gets worse with the next generation. Sorry, Mr. White. All right, let's look at the Generation Y. These are 70 million of these folks. These are probably some of the newest teachers in your building from the 70s to the 90s. They grew up being trophy kids, the helicopter moms. They could do no wrong. They got a certificate every time they opened their mouth. They're overly praised. I mean, they bring home the certificate for participation, even though they were barely participated. So they are defined by me. Everything, and Mr. White, don't take offense. I'm watching you. They are really, truly defined by what can you do for me? And so in working with these folks, and they're coming, if they're not already in your building, and you can probably, tomorrow I challenge you to go and try to look at one and just watch them in the cafeteria. They really are different. They are entitled, I guess. And this is just a generality, but they tend to be a little bit more entitled. So as you work with this generation, you're going to have a few more challenges. And when I talked with my human resource director when I last left my last superintendency, this is a hard generation to work with as far as the expectations from us who are in an older generation. They will work well with you Generation X's, but with us baby boomers, we have totally different values. So it's a little harder for the older educators in your buildings to work with our millennials, but it's a lot easier for you. So it's going to be a lot easier as long as you know who they are. Here's some of the things. They love multitask. They can be on their phone just a clicking away and listening to you. Don't take offense. That's just the way they learn. They like collaboration. They like being in teams. Remember, they grew up on that. Everybody got some reward by being a part of that team. They do like some parameters. They don't want to have it just wide open because they do like a little structure. Technology, anything you want in technology, they got it. Relationships, they're the ones, and this is the key to this generation of learners and this generation of people that's going to be in your building. They require a lot of positive reinforcement. And my generation, the baby boomers, positive reinforcement was that check you got at the end of the month. Positive reinforcement was that I didn't fire you because you came late to school 3 or 4 times. But not for Generation Millennial. Really, and as a leader, you'll have to develop your style, but they really, in general, and I'm making generalities, but in general, they really do like to be patted on the back. They really do like that little note you slip in their mailbox and say, hey, great job. Those are the kinds of things that holds the millennials in our building. Now, on the downside, they don't communicate. They don't communicate as most directly as you Generation X folks. If you have something on your mind, you will generally tell whoever's in charge. The millennials are their level of communication is that they don't want to offend. So oftentimes they will internalize some of the concerns or some of the things that you as a leader do. So be aware, they're a little bit more sensitive, and they're going to have a lot more need for that positive reinforcement. These are the folks that's in your building. Now, the next generation, the Generation Zs, and these are kids in your schools now, but they will not, before too long, will be knocking at your door for jobs. Generation Zs, these folks are born in the early 2000s, so basically they don't understand what 9/11 is. They don't understand the whole culture that changed in the country since then. They are also very competitive. These are the kids who moms got them on like every afternoon. They're like in 2 different clubs, or they're in 2 different events. Mom drives them around all the time. This is our Generation Z. They're more risk takers, they generally take more risk, and they really do like that person-to-person contact, even though they are well aware of social media. When they come to you in a couple of years, and we'll probably have the Generation Z's knocking on our door in about 5 years maybe you'll be a couple of years into your principalship when one of these generation walks in. Here are some of the things that you need to know about or how to lead them. They no longer just want a job. They want the job, but they want to feel like that they're doing something more than a job. It's a chosen avocation for them. I mean, it's more than a job. But as a part of that, there's a great sense that they want to give back. So these people will be easy to work with, kind of, sort of. The internet, I mean, there's nothing in technology they can't do. If you are at a staff meeting and every one of your teachers are on the phone, that's probably your Generation Z. They cannot put the phone down. But they do want a lot more different than the lecture. They don't even want PowerPoints. I'm sorry, that's a thing of my generation, probably of yours. They want the newest and brightest. They want to be entertained because they have been entertained with games and videos. So that's a part of your challenge when you start delivering staff development to them. And again, everything's instant. They want instant feedback. And these folks will be in your buildings in about 5 years. And the unfortunate thing is with our Generation Zs, again, if you don't provide them that sense of fulfillment as a leader or in your building, they'll move on. They will not be married to education as long as your generation and my generation has been. All right. Those are some of the challenges with adult learners. And I'm going to finish up here unless you have some questions for me. And to remind you that we meet next week at 6 o'clock, the 31st. Any questions?
I have
Yes.
a question and a comment. My question is, can you share that? Because I don't see that on my...
Yes. I'm the world's worst for closing stuff until after, so you don't get a hold of it. But I will unlock. See, you can probably see this, but I need to go to week 2. But most of the things that I share with you during the week, I will probably have them locked until the night of. I just simply go in here and edit it, and in a moment, just go here to unlock it. And in a moment, it'll be on your screen. Also, when I finish tonight, I'm going to go ahead and do the Zoom. And so you will see you'll have a Zoom link down here so you can look at that as well. All right. And once Mark sends me his stuff, I will put it here under his category. All right. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for voting in the survey. And we'll see you on the 31st. Now, generally on these meetings, I will stick around until every one of you are gone in case somebody wants to ask me something. I usually turn off the recorder, which I will do. If I can get myself back up here. I will turn off the recorder. No, it's down here. In case somebody wants to ask me something, and stop recording. Where was that?